Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Austining Virtual Library. We're so happy to have you here for our virtual potluck, and we're going to talk desserts. I'm so excited. So, Ashley, go ahead.
Um, Hi, I know most of you have been here before, but for those of you who haven't, Bambi. This is a program that Diana from the Austining Public Library and I came up with at the end of last year, and we've been doing it all year this year except for the summer. And it's called Virtual Potluck. And so every month we have a theme, and then we do two meetings during the month. One where we talk about cookbooks, because so many people don't realize how many cookbooks libraries have available. I don't know about the library where you are, but out here, even just at the Austining Library, there are a ton of cookbooks. And then within our whole county library system, there's just an enormous amount. So I like to use it to kind of try out a cookbook before I buy it, or just to see, like, dabble in a different cuisine. Because sometimes you try out a cookbook and you're like, this is just not for me. And sometimes you get one and you're like, I need to have this cookbook. So it's been really fun to explore different things with everybody here. And then the second time we meet during the month, we do a virtual cooking class. So this month the theme is desserts, and on Tuesday, October 26th at 6 p.m. Eastern, we're doing baking peppermint hot chocolate cookies, which are ones that I kind of tweaked and came up with a couple weeks ago, and they're really, really good, and I'm excited to make those. I think I'm also doing those for a kids class at Joanna's library. Is it your library? Or no, maybe it's with Rye. I think it's with Rye, and around the holidays. So if anybody else has any cookbooks that they would like to talk about, feel free to hop in. Or I've got stacks of dessert cookbooks, but I always love seeing if anybody else has any that they would like to share also.
Can I just say, Ashley, too,
Yeah.
that for your list, and people should go to our LibGuide, which is called Virtual Potluck, and all of the lists are on there from all the different topics, including tonight, as well as videos of our discussions and the cooking classes. So everything's on. If you go to austinlibrary.org and then digital library and LibGuides and look for Virtual Potluck, you'll see everything we've done.
So when you register for a class, you get the PDFs that I put together. So usually for the cookbook discussions, there's like between 2 and 3 pages worth of cookbook recommendations, and then recipes to try out. And I made it now so that you can also not just click on the link, but you can click on the picture and it'll take you to the recipe post, because sometimes they don't line up. And then the last page is local places here that have really good desserts, or whatever the theme is, but for this month it's desserts. So I'll show you, let's see, where do we start? There are so many good ones. This one is called Procrasta Baking. And this is possibly one of the funniest books that I've seen. So this is called Procrasta Baking, 100 Recipes for Getting Nothing Done in the Most Delicious Way Possible by Erin Gardner. And the format of this book is it's hilarious. The intro, it's all this just like pink and white, the whole book. And then there's just one section in the middle that's got a couple photos of different recipes. So for the most part, it's not like a photo on every spread, but the photos are very beautiful. But her intro starts with, I'm literally writing this the night before it's due. And she's like, not the whole cookbook, but just the introduction, because I felt like, writing a book about procrastinating and then not procrastinating, writing the intro would be wrong. But she talks about how she was procrastinating baking something she was supposed to be baking for recipe testing by baking something else. So it was like the ultimate form of procrastinating. And so she's like, I realized that other people also bake to procrastinate things like, doing taxes, folding laundry, mowing the lawn. And it's just such a funny way to look at it. She's got like enabling thoughts, and she gives you things that she's Googled for why people in the history have procrastinated, or, writing a book about baking to avoid doing other things was impossible to bake to avoid writing a book about baking to avoid doing other things. It's just like, it's so ridiculous, but in the funniest way. And then she's got an internet food calendar. So it's got month by month. It's got all the different food holidays. And so if you're looking for an excuse to procrastinate and bake something, she gives you ways to do it. So like if you go to October, so if we're looking at this month, all month is apple month. And then she gives you pages for recipes if you want to like look for those. So she's got like Rise and Shine with breakfast cookies on page 27 every day this month, like, you know, because it's the holiday. It's also cookbook month. And then underneath she wrote, oh, hey, it's cookie month, it's dessert month. And then she's got the daily holidays. So October 1st was Pumpkin Spice Day. The 22nd is Nut Day. The 23rd is Boston Cream Pie Day. So each month is broken down. And I thought the funniest one was December 31st, Champagne Day. Cheers to you. For someone who likes to put stuff off, you've sure had a busy year baking. So it's just a very whimsical take on it. She's got these icons, and it's like, how to use this book. And she starts off with like, do I really need to read this page? She's like, my answer may come as a surprise, but no, I suppose you don't need to read this part. Procrasti bakers aren't known to be rule followers, but if you want to read it, and she gives you like the rundown, how to use the book. She's got different icons, like these one's little rabbit ears. So if this icon is next to a recipe, it's a rabbit hole, and it says, we've all been there. You've come to 3 a.m. while watching an instructional candle making video and wonder to yourself, why did I go online in the first place? How did I get here? Where are my pants? Buckle up, because I'm sending you down the rabbit hole for more baking information. So she gives you like diversions if you want to during your reading of the recipes. So there are actual recipes in the book. So like this monkey sheet, there's a rabbit hole icon here. Why is it called monkey bread? So if you want to go off and Google, why is it called monkey bread, and then come back to the recipe in a while. And I just thought it was like a really interesting take on a cookbook. And each chapter starts out with a question, like the chapter about cookies is, if you were a cookie, what kind of cookie would you be? So just, I feel like I would be something sweet and salty probably, because like I can't pick, but does anybody have a favorite cookie that they want to share? I bet Joanna's like, unmute, go.
Go.
Yeah.
I love pinoli cookies, especially down on Arthur Avenue, because they do remind me, my grandfather used to buy them, and I love the flavor of them. And now my kids they love them as well. So we usually just go down there for the holidays. So usually, but there's a good bakery right there, Madonna. Yeah. So that's the one I like to go to there. I haven't found any place that makes them. I have never tried making them myself, but yeah, maybe one day.
Yeah. Arthur Avenue, Bambi it's in the Bronx. It's like a very like historically Italian area. My Italian in-laws, they all lived on Arthur Avenue and would like walk to the markets and get all of their stuff. And the food there is outrageous. It's so good. Trying to see if she's got pine nut cookies in this book. Pinoli cookies, page 76, Joanna.
Nice.
So,
all right.
Yeah, and they're not too sweet, right?
No.
Yeah, I like cookies that aren't too sweet. So her pinoli cookie recipe has a car icon on it. And if you look, the car icons are road trip, whether it's a craft store, big box store, or website with free 2-day shipping, you've got some shopping to do. So this is letting you know, I'm fairly certain you don't have almond paste or pine nuts in the pantry, so it's time for a trip to the store. So and I think it's such a clever book. Probably one of the most unique baking books that I've seen. And like, I wasn't even mad that there weren't pictures on every recipe. So very entertaining. Did anybody have one that they wanted to share? Or yeah, Chris.
So before you put away that procrastinating kind of theme of cookbook, it makes sense for me to make mention about how I've been making zucchini bread. I've had a vegetable garden, during the summer, and fortunately the zucchini was growing. So if you could appreciate that the rate at which they grow, you can't totally predict. And so then you're going to judge, okay, are these the kind that I'm going to put into a salad or cook them to eat as a vegetable? And, you know, to keep in mind the zucchini bread. So at times when the crop is yielding a lot, you know, and I can count, oh, there's about 6 of them ready to harvest, I would say, okay, that's a little more than I can manage right now. And I would let some of them stretch out another 2 or 3 days in the garden, which means they're getting bigger. And then as far as, you know, so I'm procrastinating at that level. And then after I do harvest them, then, okay, I'm keeping in mind that zucchini bread to make. And then they're sitting in the refrigerator and I need to monitor them to make sure that they're still going to be in good shape to use. So again, on my calendar, I'm writing down, make zucchini bread, crossing it out, putting it on the next day. And so then because I double the recipe, it means there's a little more work so that when I actually am doing it, I think that's one of the reasons I'm procrastinating, because I know I have to grate more zucchini bread, measure more flour and all that. But the end of the story is that I have managed to make the zucchini bread during the summer. Yay.
Yes. Do you grate it by hand or do you use like the food processor?
You know, that's a good question. I grate it by hand. That's the short answer. And I happen to have the food processor, but I'm not a big fan of cleaning the stuff.
Yes.
And so I find that, you know, to grate it by hand, you know, it's not that big of a chore and it's easier to, you know, clean up the hand grater than the food processor.
Okay. Yep. I know some people, I feel like I know somebody who preps zucchini, shreds it, and then squeezes the moisture out like in a kitchen towel and freezes it.
Yeah, I've done some of that. And, you know, maybe some zucchini is going to be a little more moist than others. And as far as making the bread, sometimes the recipe I notice says to just leave the moisture alone, you know, not to try to squeeze it out. And then maybe another recipe, or for instance, if you're going to make zucchini fritters, maybe for that, you know, it makes sense to squeeze it out. So, you know, use a little judgment on that.
My freezer is always full. So I'm like, I like to freeze things, but it can be tricky. I was telling Diana earlier today that last week I made tacos with my son and we did like ground turkey and taco meat or whatever. And I had a 3-pound package of turkey. So I'm like, let's just make it all. And then I'll freeze part of it and see if that works. Cause I've never frozen cooked taco meat before. And tonight I was like, I need to eat something quick before this program. I have taco meat already cooked and frozen. So I just like heated it up in the microwave real quick, like while I was cutting tomatoes and stuff. And it worked out so well. I froze it. I sealed it in like a food saver bag. So I vacuum sealed it and then it worked out awesome. I'm like, okay, next time I make tacos, I'm going to make extra because it's just it's a lot easier. Yeah, freezer is something I didn't used to utilize as much as I do now.
Now,
right.
Am I the only procrastinator, or is there anyone else who has a story?
Yeah, Bambi, go.
Well, first of all, I apologize. Like, I couldn't, like, there's always spots on my thing. I couldn't. Sorry.
We're getting the sunshine through your screen. We love it.
Yeah, I figure you guys need a comic relief anyway. But so I am Chris, a procrastinator, but at the same time, I also work part-time in the kitchen. So I kind of don't have a choice. But the more butter, the better for me. I love butter. I can just eat it pure. So I'm a shortbread kind of gal. So yeah, but yeah, I can eat butter. I'm one of those that are not conscious about anything yet. So shortbread is my favorite.
Very nice. Do you have a favorite shortbread recipe?
I do. I actually do very plain 3 ingredients, I think of 4, and that's about it. But I'm the only one that eats dessert at my house. So
okay,
there's that.
I love shortbread too, because that's another one that's not usually too sweet and just the texture is so nice. Mm-hmm. And actually that is a great segue to a different cookbook. Well, it's actually 2 cookbooks that I have from Joy the Baker. I don't know if any of you are familiar with them. These are 2 that were in the PDF that they're ones I own. I don't know if Ossining has them. I'm sure they're in the Westchester Library System, but Her first book was just the Joy the Baker cookbook, and the second one was Homemade Decadence, and she has another, at least one more cookbook at this point. Her lemon bars are so good, and they have, let's see, that's on page 111 of Homemade Decadence. I've made them many, many times. They're super easy. This picture, in my opinion, does not do them justice. So the base is a quick shortbread crust that you just press into the pan, and then you bake it for a few minutes, and then you, like, while it's in the oven, you whisk together eggs, sugar, flour, lemon zest, and lemon juice, and then you pour it on top and bake it a little more, and then you dust it with powdered sugar later. It's, I mean, like, probably the first lemon dessert that I loved. And so her intro on this said, there's a page in one of my oldest cookbooks that is tattered, butter stained, and dusted with flour. It's the page for a recipe for classic lemon bars, which is one of my favorite treats to make as a kid. The press-in crust makes me feel like I'm playing with my food, and the simple lemon filling comes together with a whisk. The bars are buttery, tart, and sweet, and so easy a child could make them. I'm proof. So Joy, I don't know if you're not familiar with her, she's one of the, like, I feel like, original food bloggers years and years ago. She started blogging about desserts, and she used to bake with her dad and her aunt. Her dad made a lot of pies, and then she would bake with him as a kid, and then she got work as a professional baker. And she, maybe at this point, like 5 years ago or so, moved from California to New Orleans, and she's got a place there called the Bakehouse New Orleans, and people come in and they, like, take classes, and she bakes with them. And I was at a conference in New Orleans a few years ago, and I really wanted to see if I could, like, make it in there, but I didn't have time. But both of these cookbooks are great. The first cookbook is 100 Simple and Comforting Recipes, and it's got everything from, like, pancakes to cinnamon rolls. These ones are giant cinnamon rolls with a buttermilk glaze. She's got, like, a hot fudge sauce, just some really classic recipes. Kitchen sink carrot cake. That's one that I want to try sometime soon. Tips on making different types of frostings, and actually her, in this book, the 133, her chocolate. I made a birthday cake for my husband one year, one of her cakes that was a layer cake, and I used this, just the best chocolate buttercream frosting. It doesn't look like anything spectacular, but it's got Ovaltine powder in it. So it's got, like, the chocolate flavor, and then that little bit of malt on it is, like, so good. So I used this recipe with, let's see, 170. So these are ones that I actually cook from fairly often. Like, if I need to make a dessert that's going to impress somebody, I'll use one of hers. So she's got a section in Homemade Decadence on layer cakes, cupcakes, and skillet cakes. And her 3-layer yellow cake, super basic. That with this chocolate buttercream with the Ovaltine powder is, like, it was so good. And then you put some fun sprinkles on it. And I think one of the first times I ever watched an Instagram live was her showing how to do a layer cake, like how to frost it properly. I had never, like, done it the right way. So putting the frosting in between each layer, and then doing a crumb coat. So, like, a really thin layer of the icing that you put on with I brought a couple kitchen tools to show in case anyone wasn't familiar. So using an offset spatula, so it's got the little bend in it. So just, like, smoothing it around the edge of the cake, and then putting it in the refrigerator for at least an hour to set it. That way, when you go to frost it with, like, the rest of the frosting, the crumbs aren't getting everywhere. So a crumb coat just kind of locks the crumbs onto the cake instead of going all over the place. And I don't know, Bambi, you might do more baking than me, because I know you do, like, professional kitchen work. Is that, like, yeah?
Yeah, you're spot on. And I think, like, for me, because I'm lazy, I just do the crumb coat, and then that's it. And then after, I think, a few months, it was an in thing. They call it the naked cake. I'm like,
yep.
Oh, I was just being lazy, but now it's like the naked cake, and they just put flowers. So I wish I did a patent on that one, then that would be mine, right? But
yeah.
But yeah, you'll see that nowadays, a lot of those.
Have you had any, like, really interesting cake combinations that you've done?
Tons.
Like,
Tons.
give us a like, what's either your favorite or like the craziest combination?
So the book that I really rely on, because I create the flavors, it's the Flavor Bible.
Yes.
My Bible. So if you guys want to play with different flavors, that is like a must to have.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend that. But in terms of weird flavors, I like to play with like turmeric, because at one point everyone's into like healthy turmeric, but the flavor combination on that for me is just weird. Like I couldn't get it to really taste, not like savory. Yes, it's a little bitter. So,
and fresh turmeric or ground or both? Both. Yeah. Yeah, so if you've ever seen like at the grocery store, turmeric kind of looks like small little ginger roots. So they kind of, this is not appetite, they kind of look like bugs, like a little bit, you know, like they look kind of like worms,
do,
you know, like fat worms. But yeah, the color is really, really vibrant, and that's what gives like a lot of curries their color. And yeah, I think it's probably used for color more often in baking than other things. But the Flavor Bible is great. I think that may have been in one of our previous cookbook chats. I don't remember, but there's also a vegetarian Flavor Bible. And that's one that kind of just like helps give you ideas for things that pair well together. If you're ever just like, you know, I have black beans, like what really accentuates black beans, or what would work with it? And you can look anything up by ingredient, and it's like a really comprehensive book.
And then you go, really?
Yeah.
Really? You know, so it's pretty entertaining, actually. You're like, chocolate and what? But you know, it's also learning. You know, the book is really, for me, it's a good reference to have. So if you get a chance to get it, you know.
Yeah. I think
I wasn't paid to say that, by the way.
The check's in the mail. I feel like the other good, like on a similar vibe to that kind of cookbook that's just a good reference is Ratio. It's is that Mark Bittman? No, Michael Ruhlman. Ratio. So it'll be like, instead of giving you a specific recipe, it'll be like, if you want to make a cake, you need 1 part, and these are not the correct parts. I'm just saying, like, you need 1 part flour, 2 parts, whatever, you know, half a part sugar. And it gives you the basic ratios for a lot of things. I have it in that closet back there that's a mess of like my husband's instruments and board games and books. But I think I actually first saw it at the library, and then I was like, this is a handy book. And so I bought it. And not just baking, it's got like, for lots of different things, but it's just kind of on the premise of you can get creative with what the actual ingredients are if you know the basic like ratio of things that go together. So I thought it was a pretty clever concept for a cookbook, I thought. And kind of on those lines, this Mark Bittman has a bunch of books. There's How to Cook Everything. This one is How to Bake Everything. And this is, I mean, massive book. Yes. Yeah, Michael Ruhlman. That's a really good book. So this How to Bake Everything, it's not all desserts, obviously, because there's plenty of baking that's savory. But what I liked in his intro at the beginning, he talks about how focusing on core recipes with numerous opportunities for variation, he hopes that it will not make you an expert recipe follower, which many cookbooks do, but to help you become a confident, intuitive baker, capable of discerning which rules you must follow and which of the many that you should break. And he doesn't say just you could, but you should break. From foolproof drop cookies to perfect croissants, the recipes in this book offer something for everyone. And he just kind of, the beginning is a lot about like, there's a section on terms. So he's got a section for lexicons, charts and equipment and basics and timing, and just kind of all of the prep work. He gives you like the breakdown of different types of flour. It's like, I mean, he's not joking. It's everything in here. There's a section for the baker's pantry, like staples that if you keep in your pantry, you should be able to bake something on a whim, and also the baker's fridge. So just stuff like all-purpose flour, whole wheat flour, bread flour, cake flour, baking soda, things like that. And he breaks down the difference between the different types of flours. There are so many different flours. Like if I had a separate freezer, I would keep a bunch of them. I just don't have the room. Then he walks you through techniques. So like how to measure dry ingredients and like level and scoop off the cup, and how to dust something with powdered sugar versus like scooping things. And he breaks down measurement conversions. So things with a volume or a weight. If somebody says a dash or a pinch, they really mean like 1/8 of a teaspoon. And then there's just sections and sections on it. There's no photos, so it's not like super exciting, but it is super comprehensive. And like the illustrations for things like forming bread is really helpful, I think. This is like an arm workout if you check this one out, and it'll be back at the library. I will drop it back off tomorrow. So, and Chris, was it you who's gluten-free? Or am I?
No, but so if you want to cover that topic, and then I do have a question after.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. My impression is that when it comes to cooking, as a general idea, there's more leeway in terms of what proportions of ingredients when compared to baking. That for baking, it's more possible to run into trouble if you stray too far away. But as far as Mark Bittman's book, it could be interesting to see what exact tips, because there could be things where you think, oh, I got to follow this, but maybe he would explain, hey, actually, you can, do it one of 2 or 3 ways, and it'll still, turn out fine.
Yeah. And I think that's his goal, is to like get you comfortable with knowing like how to discern which things fall into which category.
Yeah.
It is a little intimidating because baking feels more scientific, and I'm like an artsy person, I'm not a sciencey person. So and so he says, some people mistakenly view cooking and baking as opposites. They believe the former welcomes improvisation and rule breaking, while the latter is unforgiving, meticulous, and super scientific. Even perfectly capable cooks may decide they don't have time, skills, or patience necessary to bake successfully. But it should go without saying that if you can cook, you can bake. Many aspects of baking, from flavoring a cake to filling a pie to the frosting or sauce used to top it all off, are so easy that they'll become second nature in no time. In baking, you'll still have creative license, and the payoff is almost always delicious or crowd pleasing. And he says, some details are non-negotiable. You can't drastically reduce or increase some ingredients without noticing an effect. But yeah, so he does get into that.
I'm remembering back again to those zucchini breads, which I have made many times. That's probably the thing I've made the most. So we're talking over a long span of time, over 40, probably 50 loaves. And I say loaves, but that's interesting too, because usually in the past, I did use loaf pans. And my big variation was, to use some bigger loaf pans and some smaller ones, and realize that I would be taking the smaller ones out a little sooner out of the oven. But now we reached a point more recently where one way or another, the loaf pans, let's just say, were not available, and I won't explain why. And then I said, gee, what else could I use here? And lo and behold, as far as experimenting, I have used, in fact, 5 different size and shape pans, some of them metal, some of them Corningware, and they actually turned out fine, you see. And of course, the big thing was paying attention to the length of time and sticking the knife in, to test it. But in terms of size and shape, I ventured out and, found out things could be fine.
Yeah. We made some zucchini and banana muffins recently, and we froze a bunch of them. And then like, this is my thing now, because we didn't need like 12 muffins at a time. And I was like, oh, this will be easy for another time. And then we thawed them out, and just, I gotta tell you, vacuum sealing stuff, if you can, or just at least sucking out as much air as you can out of the bag, has been such a game changer, and like not wasting a lot of food in my house. As much as I don't love using extra plastic, depending on what you put in there, you can like use the plastic again. But it's been great for like not having freezer burn, and or buying something in bulk and like breaking it down and saving parts. Yeah, freezers, man, so helpful. I think, well, this gluten-free, I know there was somebody who usually comes and she was talking about gluten-free, and I'm blanking on which person that was, but if you're watching the replay, hi. This book, Bakerita, has a lot of, well, all of them are, it's 100 plus no fuss, gluten-free, dairy-free, and refined sugar-free recipes for the modern baker. And these desserts are beautiful. Like, they don't look like sometimes you picture like something that doesn't have the like quote unquote fun stuff in it wouldn't be pretty still, or it would be like, you know, very like healthy looking, but this stuff looks, I mean, these everything bagel scones look really, really good. I'm curious about them myself. And she does note that everything's dairy free, except there are a couple recipes that call for ghee, and that's the butter that the lactose has been taken out of, so it usually doesn't bother people that are lactose intolerant. But if you're doing it if you're vegan, you obviously would do that. And she gives you substitutions, coconut oil and stuff like that. But this cookbook, Diana saw when I was checking this out, it's called Pieometry. I don't know that I would actually ever make anything from this book, but it is beautiful. So it's museum-worthy art and pie design made easy and delicious to showcase in your own kitchen gallery. So here are all these sketches of different tarts and pies, and she walks you through. So there are these like gorgeous, gorgeous designs, and she'll walk you through how to do them. So like this one is called Wave of Wonders, and this is the final piece. These are pears, and she walks you through step by step so you can see how to build them. And she does, some of the stuff is with the fruit or vegetable. Some of it is with the pie crust. Like this is one, there's like all these cool geometric pie. Like I can't imagine eating them. They're so pretty. But it's really cool to see. There was a page, I always wondered how, like the ones like this where there's a hole in the middle, I always wondered how somebody would actually go about building that. She put something in the middle of the pie, if I can find it. And she, like a round ring, and then here we go. So that cover pie is this one. This is spoke signals is what she calls it. And that's the process. So she puts a ring in the middle and then twirls everything around it. And that's how that design ends up going. Oh yeah, this is a very math teacher type of book. And also like the puns with the names are funny. So the next one is In It to Spin It. But they're just these like really cool, I mean, it would be fun to do something like this with a kid if you weren't being like, as long as you weren't being like super perfectionist about it, like let them have fun making some cool geometric designs. Like this one's really stained glassy to me. Just some really cool stuff. Some of the ingredients are a little specialty. So like spirulina powder and stuff that you might not necessarily have easily, but just even like herringbone. So this is Survival of the Knittest, Knittest, and it's got a funfetti Oreo crust, and then a peanut butter mousse, and then the topping is Granny Smith apples and yellow apples like Golden Delicious or Opal, and she makes that pattern with it. So it's like a herringbone. And again, things that are like, after seeing this, I'm like, oh yeah, that's obvious that you would go in the middle first. I'm like, if I was gonna just do that, would I start at the top and then get halfway through and realize it's not like turning out quite right? So just really beautiful, beautiful cookbook. Again, I would say pretty time intensive, but like it would be a cool project for a weekend. This one is called Feather or Not, and they like stick up like little feathers, and that's got Nutella pie dough and a malted chocolate pudding, which just, I mean, that's decadent. But it would be, I mean, like something super impressive for like a Thanksgiving. This one is Once in a Tile, and it's black sesame pie dough, and then the filling is pumpkin black sesame. And that, I thought the design on that was really cool too. It's kind of like trippy, like magic eye puzzles kind of, but to eat. So this is a really fun book. Again, one of the more interesting ones I've seen, and I'm noticing now that the background of this is like that other pie. Like, that's a pie, that's a pie. It's just pretty cool. That's the Lauren Coe. She's a writer, artist, self-taught home baker, and founder of the popular Instagram account Loco Kitchen. Her colorful geometric style made all hell break loose on the frontier of modern pie design, appearing in outlets such as Vogue, O, the Oprah magazine, a bunch of places. So that's her. So such a cool, this was a really cool book. And I would say the other, does anybody else have any, like books or, because I'm like, there's just so many, I could keep talking. I will mention, so growing up in the Midwest, there's a pie that did I put it in the PDF? Let me see. There's a pie that I grew up with that nobody out here has really had. I didn't put it here, but I have, I'm working on revamping the post on my website. Maybe I'll talk about it at the holiday baking or the holiday cooking class, but it's a rhubarb custard pie. So a lot of people do rhubarb strawberry, but this is from a Dutch Pantry cookbook, and it my aunts have been making it forever, and it's a really tart and sweet custardy. It's just so good. It's so unique, and I had never had anything like that aside from there. And you chop up rhubarb and you let it sit in sugar until it gets watery, and then you make like an egg custard, and you put them together and you bake it, and it is my favorite. It's my favorite dessert, I think. It's really interesting. I'll put a link to it in the chat. This is an old photo. I have new photos. I just haven't had time to update the post yet. But oh no, they're pretty good photos in my opinion. But I need to redo. Let's see. That's a link to it, just so you can see what it looks like, because I feel like even hearing it doesn't sound like what it looks like. So the custard turns kind of like this yellowy kind of greenish color. And my aunt always made it with the rhubarb plant growing at her house. And it's just like sweet and tangy and delicious. Really different, like very, very different. If you don't like tart things, like my son doesn't like it. My mom didn't like it until a couple of years ago, but it's very unique. That's one that I like to bring to people. I'm looking for something different. The other, I think, most unique book that I found while I was doing research for this, and I posted this when I was reading it on my Instagram story, and I can't tell you how many people messaged me like, I'm ordering that book. It's called Rage Baking. So it's the transformative power of flour, fury, and women's voices, a collection of recipes and conversations for our time. So this book is really cool, and it's got a lot of like political women's rights movement, photography, stories in it, and like it opens up with two quotes, one from Maya Angelou that says, "You should be angry, you must not be bitter. Bitterness is like cancer. It eats upon the host. It doesn't do anything to the object of its displeasure. So use that anger. You write it, you paint it, you dance it, you march it, You vote it, you do everything about it, you talk it, never stop talking it. And then the follow-up quote from Gloria Steinem, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. So it's just like setting the tone for this book that I thought was just like, ooh. So there's a foreword and it talks about the person who founded Emily's List, an organization that existed since 1985 to elect pro-democratic women. But she goes into the whole background of her organization. And then the photos in this book, let's see, did I make a note of where it tells the person who did the photos? Yeah. So there's all these historical photos from different protests and stuff. And it says the black and white photographs that open each of these chapters were taken by Nancy K. Rudolph. Nancy photographed all over the world, and these shots are part of a collection of a women's peace demonstration in November 1980 at the Pentagon, organized by Women's Pentagon Action. Nancy was Kathy, the author's mother-in-law. I like to think that if Nancy were still here, she would be thrilled to be part of this book and in the company of this incredible group of women. So there's all these really cool photos of these women just like, you know, doing their thing, trying to get equality. And there's interviews with different famous people, filmmakers, and they share recipes and they share stories, sometimes with like their connection to women's rights or any activism that they've done. And the chapter titles are, I think, clever. There's Sugar, Spice, and Done Being Nice, Cookies, Bars, and Bites. Whisk, Fold, Knead, Rise Up, Breads. Bake Down the Patriarchy, Cakes. Comfort with a helping of righteous rage, for puddings and custards. No More Humble Pie, crumbles, pies, and tarts. Mail Order Rage. So there's just like some fun plays there. She talks about why she started baking. She just didn't kind of know what to do with all this frustration and everything. So she just went into the kitchen and put her energy into baking. So it's a cool book. There's some really interesting interviews. One of the interviews is even somebody talking about like, well, why are we telling people to bake? Like, is that really going to fix anything? Like, you know, shouldn't you channel it elsewhere? So it's kind of interesting. It's like a pretty well balanced book, I found. And some of the stuff looks really good. Like these Don't Call Me is in parentheses honey cakes. So there's little cakes with a honeycomb candy topping. Bambi, have you ever made honeycomb like this? Can you explain like I have never actually eaten it. I've seen it on the Great British Baking Show. So I know it gets like bubbly from the baking soda
and that's pretty much it. Sorry.
Yeah,
and that's pretty much it. But you can't do it when it's humid. It flattens.
So you could just not make it in New York then, I don't think.
Yeah. And you know what? There's certain things, you guys, that you want to make from home. There's certain things you want to buy. And this is one of them because it's very temperamental. So
that's good to know.
Yeah.
You might get a different type of rage from baking that.
I remember we had this gig and it was in Florida. We were opening a restaurant there and we got there and the restaurant wasn't done. Like the kitchen wasn't done. Nobody told us.
For the opening?
We had for training employees in the kitchen. Okay. So they rented and I'm serious, a food truck. And one of the things that we had to do was the honeycomb one.
In Florida?
In Florida. Let's just say the rest is history.
They're not still doing too well at the restaurant? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's an experience. But like I said, we probably did like 12 takes on honeycomb and we just gave up and said, you know what? There's no point. Let's just, because if you look at the ingredients, very easy.
Yeah, it's sugar, corn syrup, honey, water, and baking soda.
That's it. But like I said, you know, there's things that you just want to not do, just buy.
So in my mind, from what it looks like and what I've seen, like it being made on TV where it's apparently not humid, it looks like if peanut brittle or something was fluffier and not so super hard and crunchy. Like it looks like it's a little more like not dangerous for your teeth.
Yeah. You know, the best for me, at least, best peanut butter, and it's like our go-to is the microwavable ones, the peanut brittle, I mean.
Yeah.
It's an old, gosh, it's General Electric microwave cookbook. And my girlfriend always gives it to me during the holidays, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And he goes, okay. So she happens to go to a thrift store and bought this book for $1 and gave it to me, and it's just amazing. I can share that to Ashley, the recipe, and maybe you can share it with everybody, but it's so easy.
Yeah, that's so funny. Some of those old, like, weird random cookbooks end up having like really good gems in them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I'm glad to know that it wouldn't work in humidity, because had I ever dared to try that, this is like the worst place to do that, I feel like. One more like very comprehensive book. I mean, there are just so many great baking books, and this is timely because Mallory, one of the other librarians in Ossining, texted me today to let me know Dory Greenspan is doing a Q&A next week on the 14th with Barrett Bookstore. So it's her in conversation with Julia Turshen in celebration of the release of Dory's new cookbook, Baking with Dory. But so this one is Dory's Cookies. It's Dory Greenspan. She's got she's got a lot of cookbooks, I feel like, right? And as you can see, it's not light on the recipes. Like, this whole thing is recipes. There are tons and tons of great cookie recipes in here. And she has really solid notes. So aside from the fact that the photos are gorgeous, she gives you really good reasons for why you should do certain things. So like preheating your oven, she said, you know, a few years ago I had an oven specialist come check out my oven, and he told me that I shouldn't put something in to bake after the indicator light said the oven had reached temperature. He told me to wait, and I have ever since. He said, set your oven to the temperature, wait for the beep or the light or whatever signal your oven gives, and then check the oven thermometer, the one you should keep in your oven at all times, which we've done that on ours, and we learned to, for baking like bread and stuff, it takes much longer than it says. Like, your oven will beep and be like, okay, I'm ready. And it's definitely not. So she said she usually preheats it and then lets it continue to heat for 10 to 15 more minutes after it says it's ready. And that's usually, for her oven, is when it's actually at temperature. So she said the extra preheating period guarantees that the oven is hot and you're not going to cause the temperature to drop drastically when you open the door to slide in your baking sheet. So that, you know, giving reasons for, not just saying like, make sure you preheat your oven or use an oven thermometer. Like, she really explains everything. And I like her, like, I don't know if candid is the right word. Like, she fully owns up to, like, for sifting and straining, I'm a lazy baker. And if I can get away with not having to sift or strain, I will. And most of the time I can. The times I can't are when confectioner's sugar or cocoa powder is involved. These ingredients are lumpy by nature, and just whisking them together with other dry ingredients is not usually enough to thoroughly de-lump them. Trust me, if I tell you to sift or strain, it's because you must. When you need to mix together the flour, baking powder, and or soda and spices, though, you can just whisk them in a bowl and be done with it. So she's like, I'm not going to give you unnecessary steps. So if she's telling you chill something or sift something, like, trust she is an expert. And she also has a tip. And I will say, I tried this with one of her recipes years ago, and it was like kind of annoying to me to do, but she likes to roll out the dough for like rollout cookies that you cut in between two pieces of parchment paper and chill those, because it's thinner and it chills faster, and then it's already rolled out. But I don't personally like doing that, but it is a tip if you want to try that. I don't know. I'm also like, I don't like wasting stuff if I don't have to. So I feel like just like using all that parchment paper and whatever, I would rather like divide it into a bunch of different bowls and put them in the freezer and then pull them out one by one. But so this cookbook, aside from all the great tips, she's got, like, the photos are insane. Like, she's got every kind of cookie you could want, cutouts, she talks about why like refrigerating some doughs is important for them to keep their shapes. I really like the colors, like the pops of color in the background. She's got homemade fortune cookies too, things like that. Maple star anise cookies, sandwiched or open-faced. Look like some very, very glossy pictures, but and then I got a kick out of the note for these. So she calls them friendship cookies, and she said, in truth, these are rugula, and the reason I'm saying this weird is because she says, but while I've been making them for decades, I still don't know if I'm pronouncing their name correctly. I go with a short U as in rug, but perhaps the U is long as in rue. Recently, I decided to stop worrying about this detail and just call these roll-up sweets friendship cookies, because no matter whom I serve them to, the recipients want to follow me home and be my best friend. So I just thought it was like a funny way of being like, I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's delicious. I always thought it was rugula, but I don't know. But yeah, so she's got some fun and some savory ones also, like smoky cheesy cookies. I think those have smoked paprika. They have cayenne in them, some sharp cheddar and black pepper. So there's a lot of really good stuff in here. It's a fun, she's got a section on cocktail cookies to serve with like cocktail party type of stuff. Like fennel orange shortbread wedges and chocolate olive cookies and honey blue cheese madeleine. So like a lot of really interesting savory flavors. Bees sneeze nuggets, not bees knees, which is a cocktail that I'm familiar with. But let's see. These are bees sneeze nuggets. Like, they look like biscuits to me. I guess it's from, so she says the menu at Booker and Dax, a cocktail bar in New York City from the team behind the legendary restaurant Momofuku, is so interesting that you might need to have a drink or at least a pork bun to tide you over while you decide what you want to order. When my friend Rebecca ordered the bees sneeze, I looked at the ingredient list, took a sip, and immediately wanted to turn it into a cookie. Okay, so she based it from a cocktail. That's awesome. So yeah, this is a really fun book. Tons of stuff in here. I mean, you could find a recipe for really anything in here. So obviously, as always, tons of cookbooks we didn't get to, but there's just shows you how much there is at the library. Our next baking, so we'll be baking dessert on Tuesday, October 26th at 6 p.m. Peppermint hot chocolate cookies. They're delicious. My son is very sad that I'm gonna have to make them again. And then next month's cookbook discussion is Tuesday, November 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern, and it's holiday cooking. So there are some, I find like there are so many different traditions from all over the country and all over the world for different holiday things that I didn't want to do like Thanksgiving, because it's November, but I feel like the holidays are upon us, and there's some really good cookbooks out there for those type of things. So yeah.
Great. Awesome. I want to go eat cookies so badly right now.
That's why I had a hot fudge sundae before this. I was like, I can't be talking about desserts for an hour.
Nice.
So I just have a quick question. Do you have any favorite places to get cookies, like locally in Ossining or around the area?
Well, on page, let's see, the PDF that I sent on the last, so page 5, it's got a list of places locally that have really good desserts. Cookies, I'm trying to think like specifically cookies.
Or just dessert. Do you have a favorite place that you like to go?
So, as crazy as it sounds, Brothers Fish and Chips makes amazing desserts. For a while, they had a pastry chef working there, and then I know the chef and owner has like learned to make a ton of really great desserts. Their flan is insane. It's so good. They had some dessert for a while that had like popcorn on it and these little like twirls, and so good. Blue Pig for ice cream, I mean, in Croton is so good. They Bambi, it's a local place that they source most of their stuff locally. I think they have a farm in Vermont also, if I'm not, is it in Vermont? They have a
I'm not
sign up
sure.
now. They have a farm. I know they grow a lot of their stuff, and then like their coffee ice cream they make and their espresso chip, they use beans from the coffee brewery around the corner. Coffee roaster around the corner. Risotto in Thornwood. So the brother of the chef from Brothers Fish and Chips runs Risotto. It's an Italian place in Thornwood. And aside from the fact that you can get cacio e pepe tossed in a giant cheese wheel on fire, which is amazing, they do desserts where they'll like bring this whole tray, even if you just order like one small thing, and it's got like dry ice. It's like Alice in Wonderland magical tea party. It's so fun. It's super, super fun. And Los Andes Bakery in Sleepy Hollow, I went to recently for the first time. They have a ton. It's like a little hole in the wall. They have a ton of desserts. Really, really interesting. Like I think they have like Peruvian and Ecuadorian and
Chilean. Yeah. I think the owners are from Chile.
Yeah.
I think, do they still have the one in Peekskill also? I think it's Peekskill. They have one. And Sleepy Hollow. I'm not sure, but
yeah,
I think they had a second one. I'm not sure if it's still.
Yeah, it was. We were very impressed because it's across from our favorite Greek place, Santorini, on Valley Street. It's very good. And Ossining Bakery has an excellent apple cake, and their donuts are very good. And that's just like
yes.
Yeah. And
the donuts are really good there. Yeah, well, the bread, but the donuts.
Annoying, but it's good. And
I have to chime in about the Ossining Bakery growing up there.
Yeah.
I used to leave the high school and have to walk to the middle school for soccer, and we would stop at the Ossining Bakery. My family still goes there. My family still goes there for their pound cake, which I think they only make on Wednesdays. And
nice.
Jelly donuts and their glazed donuts. My whole family's a huge fan.
And if you want to take
place is great.
A drive to Beacon, glazed over donuts is incredible. They have like they give you like basically like you're filling out a test. You get to check things from each. You get to pick like a glaze, a frosting, and a topping. And they have all these different things, so you can make your own combination. They always have a donut of the day if you want to pick their like preformed combination. But they have so many interesting things. And Peaceful Provisions that used to do desserts at First Village Coffee, which does have very good desserts here in Ossining. They opened a storefront in Beacon also. Their vegan donuts, even if you're not vegan, like you would not know. I mean, obviously they don't have a bacon donut or anything, which glazed over would, but they open and they are only open until they sell out. So like, it's not worth the drive up there necessarily if you're banking on going there, because they might be out by the time you get up there. But glazed over is great. And there's a cat cafe. There's a cat cafe near it. So you can go and like play with cats, and there's really cute stores. Beacon's a fun trip.
All good stuff. So have fun baking, everyone. I'm gonna just stop the recording.